Hello, and thank you for choosing this clean, historical Western romance by Emma Ashwood. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support allows us to keep sharing more wonderful stories for free. So grab a cozy spot, kick back, and let this story whisk you away to a different time and place. Enjoy. Copyright Emma Ashwood. Finding a Family for Eli by Emma Ashwood. Chapter 1. 1874. Prineville, Oregon. The spring sun was so bright it almost hurt Sophia Meadows' eyes as she stepped down from the stagecoach. Holding tightly to Eli's hand, she stood and looked about her in awe. Prineville was a lot smaller than she had expected, Sophia mused, looking down the one-street town. Her eyes roamed beyond the town at the wide open spaces that surrounded it. On the hilly landscape, she could make out herds of cattle behind fences and ranch houses which appeared as tiny specks in the distance. Unconsciously, she exhaled, all worries dissipating. It had taken many weeks of careful consideration before making the momentous decision to uproot herself and her son Eli from the only life they had known to travel to Oregon. "Ma, look! Cows!" Eli cried out, pointing a finger at the open space that surrounded them. Sophia smiled, thrilled that Eli had remembered the drawings of cows in the books she had shown him. "It's lovely, isn't it?" Sophia said, and then added to herself, "We shall be happy here, son." "Sophia," she whirled about to the beaming face of her friend Lois McCarthy. Before she could say a word, she was engulfed in a powerful embrace. The two young women held each other and laughed with the sheer delight of being together again after 2 years. Lois stepped back and gripped Sophia's hand. "I can't believe you're finally here. And dear Eli," she reached down to lift Eli off the ground. "You've become quite the young man. I left you when you were 4 years old." Sophia laughed. "It seems much longer than 2 years." She and Lois had grown up together in Pennsylvania. Sophia married while Lois remained unattached until she finally made the decision to travel out west and start a business, declaring if she was to remain a spinster, she would make sure she was a financially stable spinster at that. She had done it too, establishing a mercantile that had expanded to the point that she now required help with the running of it. The offer had come at a time when Sophia was in some need herself. The last year had been a difficult one for her and Eli. They had seemed to drift through life, going through the motions of living, yet their hearts grieved for a lost husband and father. Sophia and Robert had both known the dangers of working in the mine, but she had never really believed that he might die and leave her to raise their boy alone. They had a plan to save up and open up an eatery back in Pennsylvania. Those dreams had died along with Robert. She had confided all this to Lois in long letters written through tears. It was then that her old friend Lois had written, inviting her to the West to begin life afresh in Oregon. She needed an assistant at the store, and who better to work with than her friend Sophia? "Let's get the luggage," Lois now said, propelling the three towards the baggage car. After retrieving the 3 suitcases that contained all the traveling pair's worldly belongings, Lois, in her usual brisk way, slipped a coin to a boy to do the carrying. Soon they were walking down the main street. Lois seemed to know everyone in Prineville. Sophia beamed. She was glad that the West had not changed her friend's bubbly nature. "I didn't bother locking up," she said as she pushed the door to the mercantile open. "It's safe here, and people look out for each other." Sophia nodded, a little in awe at the size of the store. She had expected a small store going by Lois's descriptions. Instead, the place was a large room, with what seemed like rows and rows of shelves with products brimming from each one. "Goodness, Lois, I never thought it would be this large," Sophia exclaimed. Lois gave her a wide, toothy smile. Just then, the bell sounded, and a middle-aged woman walked in, carrying a wicker basket, followed by 2 other women. "Good day to you, Miss McCarthy," the woman said, and the other women echoed her greetings. "Good day to you, ladies. Come meet my old friend, Mrs. Meadows. She and her boy have just arrived from Pennsylvania," Lois announced. Sophia cringed. Unlike Lois, she was more reserved and was not used to being put in the midst of attention in such a manner. Besides, she didn't feel ready to meet people, with her dusty dress and ruffled hair. Eli was all right. as she had managed to change his clothes before reaching Prineville. "It's a pleasure to meet you all," Sophia said. "Are you visiting or coming to stay?" The questions came hard and fast. Sophia looked at the women in mounting despair. She was not ready to answer questions about her painful past. Losing Robert was still too raw. She swallowed hard to keep the panic rising in her throat at bay. "Sophia and Eli are here to stay. Now, Sophia, I know you're tired," Lois said smoothly, saving Sophia from answering any questions. "Go on up through that door behind the counter. Lunch is ready. I'll join you shortly." Sophia excused herself, grabbed one suitcase, and gestured to Eli to follow her. "Is this our new home, Ma?" Eli asked her as they stood in a medium-sized living room, minimally furnished but comfortably. An armchair stood against one wall, with two more on the opposite side and a wooden table in the middle, resting on a blue rug that gave the room a nice cheer. "For a little while, son, until we can get our own place," Sophia said. She dropped the suitcase and walked across the room to a door she imagined led to the kitchen. Delicious smells met her when she entered the small kitchen, and her stomach growled. Sophia smiled tiredly when she saw the trouble Lois had gone to. On the square kitchen table was a variety of aromatic dishes, and to the side a vase brimming with colorful wildflowers. She inched closer and leaned over to inhale the scent. Tears jumped into her eyes. Robert had made it a tradition to bring her fresh flowers every Friday after he left the mine. "I'm hungry, Ma," Eli said, bringing her to the present. Sophia shook her head free of the painful memories. "Let's wash up and then eat. We won't wait for Aunt Lois, she might be a while." They washed up in the wooden sink and proceeded to sit at the table. Sophia dished out healthy helpings for them both. It had always amazed Robert that she remained slim but curvy with her healthy appetite. Sophia let out a giggle at the memory. "Why are you laughing, Ma?" Eli asked. "I just remembered something your father liked to tell me," Sophia said. Eli frowned and then turned back to his food. Her mirth was quickly replaced by sadness. Eli's memories of his father were fading. No matter how many stories of Robert she told him, Sophia could see that his interest was fading. It saddened her to imagine that in another year, all memories of Robert would have faded. She supposed children had so much going on in their little worlds that they moved on with their lives much easier than adults. It made her heart ache, though. Robert was everything a woman would have wanted in a husband. He had worked hard for them, ensuring they lacked nothing. But more than that, he had taught her the love between a man and a woman. Sophia looked around the front room. She had pegged all her hopes on coming here, bringing them a fresh start. But Robert's memory had followed her to the west. Just then, footsteps pounded the stairs, and they heard the sound of the door opening. Lois poked her head into the kitchen before coming in. "I can't thank you enough, Lois," Sophia said, her emotions on the surface. "Now, don't start that," Lois scolded. "You know I would do anything for you. Besides, I'm being a little bit selfish. I want you to like it here and stay forever. I can't tell you how much I have missed you." "You have a lot of friends," Sophia said with a smile. Lois waved a hand in the air. "They can't compare to a friend you've known all your life." Tears filled Sophia's eyes again. Lois screwed her eyes. "I never knew you to be so emotional, Sophia, but I suppose you've endured a lot of suffering in the last year." Sophia could not speak. If she opened her mouth, it would emit a sob. She nodded instead. "Not to worry. Everything will be all right now." Lois sat next to her and took both of Sophia's hands in hers. "Prineville has a way of easing one's troubles. You wait and see." "I hope so," Sophia said. "Now finish up and have a nap, both of you. That's an order from your new employer," Lois said, and they erupted into giggles. Nesh 2. "I made a promise to your father, and I intend to keep it," Lance Kirtman said in a controlled voice that belied his emotions. Levi stood with his hands on his hips and contemplated his Uncle Lance, who resembled his late father uncannily. He had steel-blue eyes that focused without flinching. They had the same authoritative manner that had caused a lot of discord between Lance and his father. His nostrils flared at the unfairness of it all. His uncle had no right to refuse him the deed to the ranch. It was his birthright. It was not the first time they were discussing the ranch deed. and this time Levi had hoped his uncle might have mellowed. After all, his father had been dead for 3 months now. "When you show some maturity, I will happily hand you the deed to the ranch," Uncle Lance said. "I am mature enough. I'm a man now. I've worked on that ranch all my life. What more do you want?" Levi asked, his frustration almost boiling over. "Do what other mature men do. Keep good company, and you could go a step further and marry," his uncle said, his voice taking on an amused tone. "A good woman would do wonders for you." "Like you?" Levi said, knowing he was pushing his uncle too far. To his surprise, his uncle grinned at him. "You might have to swallow those words soon, son," he said, and wagged a finger. His uncle abruptly changed the topic. "2 more weeks, and we'll be ready to ship," he said. Levi stifled a sigh of impatience. He was not interested in the affairs of the ranch at that moment. Still, he feigned interest and escaped as soon as he could. Lance watched his nephew trudge towards the barn in dismay. A few minutes later, he galloped away, leaving a blaze of dust. He shook his head. What would it take for the boy to mature and grow into the man Lance believed he could be? He hoped that he and his departed brother were right to believe there was some hope that Levi would turn out all right. He knew exactly when the tide had turned. Levi had been a good, obedient child until his mother passed on when he was 15 years old. His brother had not helped matters as he had retreated into his grief, and when he resurfaced, it was too late. Levi had grown into a sullen and rude boy, and when he became a young man, he took up with bad company that made his behavior even worse. If Levi did not change, Lance would be in Prineville for a very long time. The thought did not depress him as much as it should have. His heart lightened when he thought of his growing friendship with Lois McCarthy, the woman who owned the mercantile. His admiration for her grew the more he knew her. He was enjoying courting her, taking it very slowly, worried about frightening her off. He would go there now, Lance decided. He would kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He truly believed finding a good Christian woman would be the key to changing Levi, but he knew his nephew needed to be pushed to marry. He had a plan formulating in his mind, and he knew that it was probably time that he took matters into his own hands. It was with a light step that he made his way to the barn and saddled his stallion. He soon forgot about a bride for his nephew as his thoughts were completely taken over by images of Lois. She had a smile that could light up the darkest rooms, and at that moment he felt in need of one of her smiles. Sophia knew the man was special to Lois as soon as he walked into the store. Lois ran her hand through her hair and adjusted the apron she wore in store. Her face turned color as she turned to the man with a smile that spoke more than words would have. "Lance, come on in," Lois said, her voice soft. "Lois," the man said her name as though it was a song. From behind the shelf, Sophia watched the exchange with interest. They could not see her from where she stood, while she could see them from between the shelves. The rather large man walked over to Lois and took her hands. "You haven't been in a while," Lois scolded. The man laughed. "I don't want to exhaust you with my presence." Feeling guilty at eavesdropping on a private conversation, Sophia stepped out from behind the shelf. She was also very curious as to who the man was. Lois jumped when she saw her, and a flush crept across her cheeks. "Lance Kirtman, meet my old friend and now employee, Sophia Meadows," Lois said. Sophia smiled at the man and struck out a hand. He had a strong, steady handshake and looked her right in the eye as they exchanged greetings. "She's not old," Lance Kirtman teased, and they all laughed. They exchanged a few pleasantries before Sophia excused herself to head upstairs, her intention to give them some privacy. She smiled as she left the store. Lois had not confided in her that she had a beau. She couldn't wait for when they were alone to ask her about it. As happy as she was for her friend, a wave of nostalgia for a good relationship engulfed her. Life was fulfilling when one had a good man to love. Perhaps her own gentleman was at this very moment replying to the advertisement she had placed in the matrimonial section of the local newspaper a week earlier. She too was keeping secrets, Sophia thought. She hadn't confided in Lois about her intentions to look for a husband. It had been an eventful week, and seeing families enter the store had rekindled her desire to be a part of a family. Writing the advertisement had been an impulsive act, done when it was Lois's turn to prepare their dinner, and she was in the store alone with Eli. It was a little unusual, a woman writing an advertisement. Normally, it was the gentleman that placed messages seeking brides, but it wasn't unheard of, and now she was out west anyway. It was not that she was lonely either. The store kept her busy, and with Eli away at the school just down the street, she had not felt that settled since Robert's death. A tiny piece of her heart remained untouched by all the good things that had happened to her. Unlike Lois, Sophia was the kind of person who could not be entirely settled until she had a family. She longed for Eli to have a father, and coming to the West had brought out that desire strongly. It was not something she had thought of before while in mourning for Robert. But if Prineville was to be a new start, she had to open up her heart again to loving somebody. Lance's plan for his nephew was simple. He would place an advertisement in the Matrimonial Times for a mail-order bride. He would then communicate with the ladies who replied, pretending to be Lance, before finally settling on one. Many others had done it. It seemed to be a very sensible way to go about obtaining a bride. But it wasn't without risk. The lady in question may not be all they seemed in the correspondence, but by then they would have arrived in town, and there would be little that could be done without a certain degree of dishonor. However, on occasion, ladies who were already in the region placed advertisements in the local paper. Sometimes ladies from the cities on the East Coast even placed advertisements, especially if they were minded to come to Oregon. It seemed more sensible to Lance to see if this were the case. Lance leant on the counter and scanned the advertisements in the newspaper he had taken from the stand. From the corner of his eye, he watched Lois as she deftly packed a customer's goods before folding the top of the brown envelope. Her movements were quick and her manner affable. He liked that about her. She spoke to everyone in an equally friendly manner. It briefly crossed his mind how lucky he was that she had not been snatched up by some bachelor before now. She was everything a man would want in a woman. His eye was caught by an address on the paper. He frowned as it dawned on him why the address was familiar. It was for the Mercantile. His heart rate quickened and his legs became weak. His Lois was advertising herself as a mail-order bride. His eyes grew blurry. He could not bear to read the rest of the advertisement. Her laugh cut through his thoughts. He lifted his head to look at her. She must have sensed his stare, for she turned to look at him. The pain he felt reflected in his face. How could she encourage his attentions when all along she was looking for someone else? Lance's instinct was to leave the store and never return, but he never acted on his first instincts. His work as a surveyor for the railway had taught him to weigh matters before making a rash decision he might regret later. He swallowed hard and waited for the customer to depart. His brain was at work, thinking of how to end it with Lois without making it worse for the both of them. He still liked and admired her despite her treachery, and he would hate to humiliate her. He felt at odds with himself, as though he had lost his footing. So much had rested on Lois eventually becoming his wife. Perhaps he had not made his intentions clear enough. Maybe he had been too slow in courting her. A painful thought crossed his mind. Perhaps she was not attracted to him. Chapter 3. How could you not tell me something as momentous as that? Lois demanded, staring her friend down from where they stood in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner. Eli, tired after a long day, had retired and left the ladies alone. How had she found out? Sophia quickly went over the possibilities. It was likely that Lois had seen the newspaper, but in the time she had been in Prineville, she had not seen her friend once pick up a newspaper to read. "How did you find out?" Sophia asked. To her surprise, Lois burst out into laughter. Sophia looked on in amazement as her friend laughed until tears flowed down her cheeks. Finally, she wiped off her tears with the sleeve of her dress. "Lance thought I had placed the advertisement myself," Lois explained. "He was madder than a rattlesnake when he asked me." Sophia tilted her head. "He's courting you, isn't he?" Lois's hands crossed her chest and her eyes took on a faraway look. She nodded. "Oh, Lois, I'm so happy for you. He seems like a good, solid man, Sophia cried out. I think so too, Lois said and looked at Sophia almost shyly before her expression changed to a fierce one. Now tell me what this is all about. Are you not happy here with me? Yes, of course I am. I've never felt as settled as I do now, but Lois, Eli needs a father, and I. Sophia tried to explain. Lois nodded. You know, months ago I would not have understood, but now I do. It's wonderful to have feelings for someone. A startling thought crossed Sophia's mind. Lois, did you tell Lance it was me who placed the advertisement? What must he think of me? Lois waved a hand. It's not an uncommon practice here, and I can assure you Lance would not think badly of you for that. Besides, something good did come out of that conversation. Sophia looked at her friend suspiciously. It turns out that Lance was reading the advertisements in search of a wife for his nephew Levi. Sophia's mouth hung open in shock. So I suggested that perhaps he could match you up with his nephew. He's a good man, he just needs to find a woman. No, Lois, that's taking advantage of his feelings for you. Supposing he had already decided on another woman? He has not. He was drawn to your advertisement, Lois insisted. Sophia smoothed down her apron. It was so easy to say yes. Perhaps Lance's nephew was the man God intended to be her husband. Her heart pounded. It was all happening too fast. She had believed the process would take forever. Possibly she might not have had a response at all. Her chest rose as she inhaled deeply. It was so confusing. What do you have to lose? Lois asked. You only have to meet him. If you don't like him, just say so, and that will be the end of the matter. Besides, I'd feel more comfortable with someone known to Lance than a stranger. Sophia's hand went to her mouth, and she nibbled anxiously on her fingernails. What's his name? Levi Kirtman, Lois said. Sophia repeated the name. She liked it. It was a strong name, yet playful. Was he as tall and strong-looking as his Uncle Lance? An image of a man jumped to mind. He had a muscled chest and strong arms that went around her waist, holding her close. She tried to make out his face, but it was blurry. Come back, Lois teased. Sophia's face grew warm. How foolish of her to think of a man she only knew by name in such a manner. What was the matter with her? She was not desperate, yet the truth was that she longed for the physical closeness that marriage brought. She missed that part of her life with an intensity that sometimes frightened her. Shall I tell Lance he can bring his nephew along to meet you? Lois asked. Yes, Sophia said, and as soon as she gave voice to her thoughts, her heart lightened. A laugh escaped her lips. She couldn't believe that soon she would meet a man who could turn out to be her new husband. Then there was guilt and sorrow. Had the memory of her beloved Robert faded so soon? No, she reasoned, but she also knew her son needed a father. Levi forced his feet forward as he followed his Uncle Lance into the mercantile. He narrowed his eyes and watched as his uncle greeted the owner. Levi, come over and meet Miss Lois McCarthy, his uncle said. Good evening to you, ma'am, Levi said, barely opening his mouth to speak. He did not want to be here, and he had no interest whatsoever in marrying anybody. His uncle had insisted on the meeting, and he had gone along with it just to appease him. He would just bide his time until his uncle trusted him enough to deed over the cattle ranch to him. In the meantime, he would pretend to go along with whatever he wanted, but he drew the line at marriage. He liked his life, with nobody asking him where he was going or what time he was returning home. Sophia just popped out for a short while. She'll be back soon, the woman said to him. Levi gave her a tight smile and glanced away. To avoid making conversation, he strolled over to the shelves and busied himself looking at the goods. He grew impatient every minute that passed. He would give this Sophia woman 5 more minutes, and if she was not back, he would excuse himself. The bell to the store rang a few minutes later, and Levi peered through the gap in the shelf. His eyes took in the woman's arresting face, with her large brown eyes and flawless skin. Levi inhaled sharply. Following her was a boy aged about 5 years who was holding a sachet. He followed them as they walked over to Lance and Miss Lois. He frowned and wondered why a pretty woman such as herself would resort to placing a mail-order advertisement when she could have her choice of men. He shrugged off his questions, his interest fading, and left his hiding spot. He wasn't the marrying kind, and Sophia certainly was. He was there to please his uncle, nothing more. Levi, This is Miss Sophia Meadows and her son, Eli Meadows. Sophia, this is my nephew, Levi Kirtman. She had the kind of face that one did not easily forget. Her face turned crimson as she took him in. Levi was used to women reacting when they met him. Like his father, he had been bestowed with good looks, taking the best from his mother and father. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Meadows," Levi said. His uncle had told him that the woman was a widow. "Please call me Sophia," she said in a voice that was softly pleasing. He nodded, noting the sparkle in her eyes. She really wanted this, Levi deduced. It certainly would not be to him, but he would wager his last coin that within a month she would be married. "This is my son, Eli," she continued. He looked at the blonde-haired boy who must have taken after his father because he looked nothing like his mother. Levi nodded. "Perhaps you can invite Levi for a cup of tea upstairs while you get to know each other," Ms. McCarthy suggested. "Yes, forgive my manners," Sophia said. He gazed at her attractive mouth and then tore his gaze away. "I'm afraid I must decline your invitation for now, as I had a previous engagement." Levi could feel the burn from his uncle's eyes. There was no way he was going to be stuck with the woman for hours when he had no interest in marrying her. He felt a little bad when Sophia's face paled. He had embarrassed her, but he wanted to end the charade immediately. "I'm sure Levi himself will arrange another meeting." "Won't you?" Uncle Lance said, his voice laced with a cold edge. It was at the tip of Levi's tongue to tell his uncle where he could stick his words. Instead, he gave Sophia a winning smile. "Of course I will. It just so happens that I had a previous business meeting I could not avoid." She visibly relaxed, and he could see the relief in her eyes. For a moment, he almost felt sorry for her. Chapter 4. Business arrangement indeed, Uncle Lance retorted as soon as the store's door closed. Levi shrugged, unperturbed by the anger in his uncle's voice. If he had listened to him, rather than forcing Levi to do something he did not want, he would have saved himself the embarrassment that would surely follow. Levi had no intention of returning to the mercantile again. "She's a fine woman, Levi, and you're a bigger fool than I thought if you don't see that," Uncle Lance said. Levi did not reply. They had stopped in front of the hitching post where their horses were tied. The movement came before Levi knew what was happening. His uncle gripped his shoulders and swung him roughly around so that their noses almost touched. "Hey," Levi protested. "Stop fooling around," Uncle Lance said. "Will you marry her or not?" Levi grasped his uncle's hands and pushed them off his shoulders. He straightened his shirt. He hated nothing more than being forced to do something. His rebellious streak came out then. "No, Uncle Lance, I am not marrying Sophia or any other woman. I like my life as it is," Levi said. His uncle inhaled sharply. "In that case, you can forget about the deed." "Father did not say anything about marrying," Levi said. "That's me who is saying. That nice young woman in there will make a man of you. That's my offer. Marry her, and I'll deed over the ranch to you after the ceremony." His uncle's face was lined with veins across his forehead. He meant it, Levi thought. Well, he was not giving up his freedom for anything, not even for the cattle ranch. Marriage? To a widow with a child? No, her beauty didn't matter. At that moment, he made a decision. Uncle Lance could keep the deed. He was done pleading and begging for his birthright. Levi quickly untied the reins, mounted his horse, and took off, deliberately throwing dust in his uncle's face. Rather than heading straight to his intended destination, he rode off as though headed to the mountains. He rode for a mile or so before turning back to the saloon. As angry as he was with Uncle Lance, it wouldn't do for him to know that Levi was headed to the saloon. Levi did not wait for his eyes to adjust to the dimness of the saloon. He knew his way around, and he headed for the back where the poker game was played. He could do with a round to relax and forget all his troubles. Now that he had made the decision to forget the ranch, he felt in need of a celebration. "Got room for one more man?" Levi asked the group of men seated around the poker table. The room was so smoky, he couldn't make out the faces of the men. His heart pounded in anticipation as felt the tension that simmered in the air. Poker brought out the best and the worst in men. When you were on a winning streak, it was akin to taking a horse on a wild, fast gallop. "Not before you pay up what you owe me from last time," a voice growled. Levi saw in dismay that Ollie Blythe was in the group. Levi owed him for a game he had lost, and the man kept bringing it up. "Come on, Ollie, you know I'll pay you," Levi coaxed. It would not be the first time that he had owed someone money and bided his time until the person gave up on Levi ever paying the debt. He knew that with time Ollie would get tired of asking for his money. "I know no such thing. Now don't bother pulling up a chair, just go get my money." Levi knew when he was beaten. He gave a good-natured shrug and left the back room. He would relax with a few glasses of ale, he decided. "Howdy, Levi. A glass of whiskey?" the bartender asked. Levi shook his head. His body did not handle whiskey very well. "Make it an ale, Griffin," the bartender laughed. "Can't handle the strong stuff?" Prosody rate %. Levi gave him a cold look, and he laughingly turned away to pour out the ale. He nodded his head to a pair of strangers slumped in the corner. After downing one mug, he felt slightly better. He soon forgot all about the ranch deed and began talking to the strangers. 10 or so mugs later, Levi knew he was on his last legs. He needed to go home now, or he would find himself still in the saloon in the morning light. Levi staggered out to the darkness outside and stood for a moment to think where his horse was. A soft neigh alerted him to the location of his gelding, and he staggered towards it. As he bent to untie it from the rail, a kick landed on his behind, and he toppled over. "What?" Levi started to say when another kick caught him in the small of his back. A searing pain shot through his body. He groaned and attempted to stand up. The fists came then, raining on him from every angle. Then mercifully, they stopped, and he felt himself pulled to his feet. "Listen here, you young fool. I want my money. 1 week is all I will give you. If you don't have it then, you'll get what's coming." It was Ollie. The alcohol was dulling Levi's senses and his deafness. Sober, he could have taken the man easily, but as it was, his arms flung around uselessly. Ollie let him go abruptly, and he landed on the ground. Levi struggled to his feet, and after much effort, he mounted his horse. "Take me home," Levi said, his head throbbing from the blows he had received. Miraculously, the horse seemed to understand, and he gently trotted away. "What happened to your face?" Uncle Lance demanded, already knowing it was some kind of fight. He just hoped it hadn't been over a woman. Levi had been expecting the question. His right eye was swollen and black. He was lucky, though, that there were no cuts to his face. He had given much thought to the matter. The fact was that he owed Ollie money, and he didn't have it. He knew the man meant his threat. Desperately, he had considered begging Uncle Lance for a loan, but he dismissed the notion quickly. He had lent him money too often in the past, and refused his last 2 requests. Besides, Uncle Lance would want to know what the money was for. Levi leant on a fence post, his body weakened by dehydration. He glanced at the cows, contentedly chewing on the grass. "Lucky buggers," he thought. "Well," Uncle Lance prompted. "I fell on the way home," Levi lied. "Oh, really?" Uncle Lance said. "Looks like a brawl to me." "No, Uncle, nothing of the sort," Levi said in a pleasant voice. "Spit it out, then. Some of us have work to do," his uncle said. "Well, I've decided to marry Sophia. As you said, she's a wonderful young woman and would make a good wife. If, of course, she is agreeable and we are suitable for each other." The words almost choked him. His uncle beamed and then eyed him with suspicion. "What brought about the change?" "I just gave what you said some thought," Levi said. "There's one more thing. I want to do this quickly. No grand ceremony and all." "No problem," Uncle Lance agreed. He reached between the fence wires and clapped his back. Levi winced. The pain from the kicks he had received from Ollie still hurt. "When will you propose to her?" his uncle asked. "In a day or 2, Levi said. He needed a little time for his injuries to heal. "That's good to hear, son. Your father would be very proud of you." Levi shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "One other thing, Uncle Lance. Sophia and I will need some money to start with. Can't start marriage on the wrong footing. It will just be an advance. I'll pay you back as soon as I can." Uncle Lance contemplated him without speaking. His expression was deadpan, and Levi was sure he was going to say no. He didn't know where else he could get the amount he wanted. "How much did you want?" Levi pursed his lips and then named a figure. His uncle whistled. "You need all that to start a marriage." "You see," Levi started to say. Consider it done. Levi could have wept with joy. As he strolled back to the ranch house that had belonged to his father, he made vows to himself. He was done with poker. He never again wanted to be beholden to the likes of Ollie Blythe. Chapter 5. Sophia sat with her hands resting on her lap. Levi Kirtman made her feel extraordinarily shy, and she could not look at him for any length of time without looking away. He sat on the couch, his long legs stretched out before him, and contemplated her without shifting his gaze. He made no effort at conversation, and she found herself fidgeting in her chair. She hadn't felt so uncomfortable with a man before. "Do you like it here in Prineville?" he finally asked in a lazy tone. "I like it very much, and so does Eli," Sophia said, grateful to have something to talk about. "You were born in Prineville?" she asked. "Never left the West," he said. "Except when I accompanied my father for business-related trips, I've always lived here." "I wouldn't have left Pennsylvania had it not been for losing my husband," Sophia said. "My family are all back in Pennsylvania, but Eli and I needed a change and a means of support." "Don't worry about money. I will take care of both of you now," Levi said. Sophia was taken aback by his declaration. "I'd like to marry you, Sophia Meadows," Levi said, leaning forward to look into her eyes. "As soon as possible. Next Friday would be good." Sophia's legs grew weak. When she recovered somewhat, she resisted the urge to giggle. Not even Robert had been that eager to marry her. This was their first meeting after their initial introduction. She had thought they would take time to get to know each other first. She looked into his intense brown eyes and melted. He was frowning now, before his expression changed and he smiled at her. Emotion grabbed her by the throat. Levi was a man who knew what he wanted, and he wanted to marry her. She thought of her son. Levi had said nothing about Eli. "What of Eli?" she blurted out. "Your boy needs a father, doesn't he?" Levi said. Tears sprung to Sophia's eyes. How had Levi instinctively understood her deep need to have a father for her child? Still, doubt lingered in her mind. Why the rush? Surely they could wait a few weeks to get used to the idea? She chose her words carefully. "I say yes to your proposal, and I'm much honored, but I'd like us to wait a few weeks. We ought to get to know each. Listen, Sophia, I'm a man who makes up his mind on the spot, and the moment you entered the store, I knew you'd be my wife." Sophia's heart melted. He had seemed so hard then. Who would have known emotions were simmering beneath his frown? "I don't want to wait weeks or months. The sooner we marry, the better. We'll become a family, and we can get to know each other at a leisurely pace while we're married." He reached out and took her hand. "What do you say, Sophia?" She inhaled deeply. He was so earnest in his feelings for her. Sophia admitted that she too had strong feelings for Levi, feelings that could easily grow into the kind of love she had shared with Robert. She squeezed his hands. "I say yes. I'd like to marry you, Levi Kirtman." Levi dropped her hands and jumped to his feet. He buried his hands in the pockets of his trousers. "That's settled then. Friday it is. I'll make arrangements with the pastor." He made as though to leave. Stunned, Sophia got up. "Wait, what shall I wear?" "I'm sure you'll think up something," he said over his shoulder, and in a minute he was gone. It took a full minute for the shock to wear off. If she was a fanciful person, Sophia would have thought she had dreamed up the proposal. She stumbled back and sat down. Hurt rose up her throat, and she fought back the tears balancing on her eyelashes. What kind of man proposed to a woman and then took off? She had expected to spend the afternoon with him, but he had seemed in a rush to leave. Sophia wrapped her hands around herself. The memory of Robert proposing came to her mind. He had taken her out for a picnic and then presented her with the most glorious arrangement of flowers. He had knelt down before her and taken her hands and then proceeded to propose. Later, Robert had admitted to her that it had taken weeks to get the words right for the proposal. What was she to do? Common sense told her to wait until she got to know Levi better. Fear invaded her senses. He was a handsome man. What if he found someone else or decided he did not want to marry after all? Not many men would be willing to take on a woman with a child. Sophia let the words of the pastor wash over her. She was glad that Levi had not wanted a full church ceremony that would have reminded her too much of her first marriage. She sneaked a glance at Levi. He looked so handsome and solemn in his brown suit, which matched her own cream suit. They made a dashing pair. Everyone had said so. Do you, Levi Kirtman, take this woman to be? A warm tingle started in her toes and rose up, enveloping her whole body. She had not thought she would feel as happy as she did at that moment. She knew Lois had been responsible for getting her to accept Levi as he was. No two men were alike, she had told Sophia. Some are brisk, like Levi, but their feelings run deep. Others wore their hearts on their sleeves as Robert had, but that did not mean one would make a better husband than the other. It was true. Look how Levi's eyes had bored into her face as she walked in, as though he wanted to memorize every contour of her face. Her hand sat nestled in his, and every so often he gripped it tighter. What more did she need? Her boy had a father, and she had the family she had longed for. Sophia closed her eyes and savored Levi's words as he promised to love her for the rest of their days. Her turn to say her vows came next. Every word she spoke came from the bottom of her heart, and when she was done, she dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. The ceremony was soon over, and they all gathered outside to accept congratulations from their friends and family. Levi and his best man, a man she had not met before named Hubert, stood to one side and chatted. She would have preferred Levi to stay by her side, but she shrugged it off, knowing they would be together forever now. How does it feel to be married again? Lois asked, sidling to her side. Sophia beamed. It feels wonderful, and the best part is that Levi has no problem with me working, so we will still be together every day, my dear Lois. Lois gripped her hand. I am so happy for you, my friend. You deserve it. Eli seems happy. Sophia turned to her side where Eli stood with Lance, who was keeping him entertained. He is. You found yourself a good man too, Lois. Look how much time he gives Eli, Sophia said, a wistful tone in her voice. There was silence before Lois spoke up. He'll come around too. Relationships take time to develop. When he does, he'll see what a lovely boy our Eli is. I hope so, Sophia said and turned her gaze to Levi and Hubert. They were now laughing together, and for whatever reason their laughter made her feel uncomfortable. She couldn't point out what it was about Levi's friend Hubert that did not sit well with her. She had seen the cautious expression that Lance had adopted when Hubert had first arrived for the ceremony. The man had regular, unremarkable features with shifty gray eyes which did not stay in one place for long. Let's go and celebrate, Lance called out in his booming voice that got everyone's attention. You heard what Lance said. Let's have ourselves a wedding feast, Lois said and laced her fingers through Sophia's. It was good to have Lois at her side, Sophia thought. Otherwise, she would have felt sorry for herself. Levi was everything that Robert was not. She hated to compare the two men, but she felt vulnerable and discarded. Robert would have stuck to her side throughout the day. Levi and his friend led the party, walking ahead of the group as though they were not together. She had been so happy while they were exchanging vows. Her life had become a humdrum of emotions. She prayed fervently that with time they would both settle down and find a middle ground. Yes. Chapter 6. The atmosphere in the buggy was tense. Eli sat between Levi and Sophia, and they had not exchanged one word since they left town. The wedding feast at the only hotel in Prineville had been a disaster as far as Sophia was concerned. Levi had spent the time speaking to Hubert Blythe, who had sat on his left. Levi now guided the buggy off the road onto a wagon trail, and before long she could make out the ranch house, a rambling building that stood in the middle of two trails. In front of the house was a well-kept lawn. The sight of the homely house cheered her up considerably. Is that our new home, Ma? Eli asked, his voice timid. She held him against her. I think so, son. Levi looked ahead with his mouth curled into a frown. He did not say a word. Sophia swallowed her disappointment. That would have been the moment to welcome them both to the ranch. To Sophia's surprise, Levi drove the buggy on past the rambling ranch house and onto one of the two trails. Another house came into view. It stood alone, and Sophia could tell it was newly built. He brought the buggy to a halt in front of the house and jumped down. She and Eli stood to the side and watched as Levi carried their 3 cases into the house. What are you waiting for? "Come in," he said. A small porch led to a hall with wooden hooks drilled to one side of the wall and a long table that held unopened envelopes. "Your room is at the very end of the hallway," Levi said, without looking at her. "The boy can have the one opposite. Can I speak with you privately?" Sophia nodded. "Eli, go and see you room while Mr. Kirtman and I have a word." She followed him into a front room with a huge stone chimney. Despite being sparsely furnished, it exuded a feeling of warmth. With some rugs and a few trifles, it would look like a real home. She sank into a couch and patted the sides. It was a nice room in which to rest after a hard day's job. It seemed as though Levi chose to sit in the chair furthest from her. He sat perched on the edge and trained his eyes on her. She shivered unconsciously. Before he spoke, he glanced away. "This is the situation," he said. "My father left the deed of the ranch to my Uncle Lance rather than to me," he said, his voice laced with a hard edge. "My uncle's condition to deed over the ranch to me was—" His voice trailed off. Sophia's muscles stiffened, and she went absolutely still. A slab of icy coldness settled in her core. What was Levi saying? "I had to marry to get the deeds to the ranch," he said without looking at her. "You married me to get your ranch?" Sophia managed to ask. "Yes," Levi said, and when he finally looked at her in his unblinking way, his eyes told her that all he said was true. Sophia gripped the sides of the couch. She wanted to cover herself with a blanket, sleep, and wake up to find that it was all a bad dream. Levi was talking. She fought to bring her attention to the present. "I'll provide for you and the boy until the deed is turned over to me. Until then, we shall be married in name only." He stood up as though in the greatest rush to get away. "I have to meet someone in town. Make yourselves comfortable." When the front door closed, Sophia sank deeper into the couch. She felt as though she had been run over by a wagon. A deep feeling of sadness engulfed her. It felt close to the day she had lost Robert, except this time she was mourning a man who had never belonged to her. Tears filled her eyes. What was she to do now? She wanted to hate Levi for what he had done, but she couldn't find it in herself to do so. He did not know what he was missing by forgoing their marriage. If only she had followed her instincts and refused his proposal. It never harmed anyone to take one's time before rushing into anything. She thought of Eli in what he believed was now his room. What would she tell him? Her head throbbed as more questions than answers filled her mind. She could walk out at that moment and tell everyone what Levi had done. The idea held little appeal. For one, she would hate the sympathy that was sure to follow. The most pressing reason, however, was Eli. What would that tell him? Sophia believed that children learnt from their parents. How would something like that affect him? Eli was a child sensitive to his mother's feelings. If he thought her to be unhappy, he too would become unhappy. Not to mention the questions he would ask her. Why had Mr. Kirtman chased them from his house? No, she was not ready to face that. Sophia listened to her heart. She thought of Levi. She found it difficult to believe that a man could choose the bachelor life when he had the choice of a family. Robert had told her every day how happy she and Eli had made him. He looked forward to coming home every day because of them. Something inside her told her that the good Lord had not brought the two of them together for nothing. She would go along with Levi's wishes and cling to the faith that the Lord had a plan for them all. Levi walked into the saloon with a bounce in his step. He self-congratulated himself on his fast thinking. He had solved all his problems in one go. He sauntered past the bar room and into the back room. "Count me in," he shouted, brimming with confidence. A chair scraped, and Ollie stood up to his full height. He glared at Levi. Levi gave him a lazy smile and reached into the pocket of his trousers. He removed the wad of cash and threw it on the table. A collective gasp went up. "There's your money," Levi spat. Ollie glanced at the bills suspiciously before reluctantly picking them up. "Debt settled. Now can we get on with the game?" Hubert Blythe, Levi's closest friend, spoke out. Levi grinned at him and sat down in the chair next to him. Hubert still wore the ill-fitting suit he had worn at the ceremony a few hours earlier. His bloodshot eyes told Levi his friend had already downed a few shots of whiskey. "Lance paid up?" Hubert whispered to him. "He did. Just waiting on the deed now," Levi whispered back. "Drinks are on you," Hubert said and clapped Levi on the shoulder. Money is not a problem, Levi bragged. From the other end of the table, Ollie glared at him. What's with him? Levi asked Hubert. He should be glad he got his money. Hubert waved an impatient hand. Forget him. Let's have ourselves a good time. At the back of his mind, a small voice reminded him of his earlier promise to himself to quit poker. Only this once, Levi said to himself. Besides, he had quite a stash left over after he paid Ollie. He owed it to himself to celebrate. The image of Sophia sprang to mind. Her face had paled when he told her the reason for marrying her. Her brown eyes had enlarged, and her hands had gripped the sides of the couch as though she was about to fall. For a second there, Levi had worried she would have a fainting spell. She would get over it, he reasoned. Besides, it had been foolish of her to accept a marriage proposal from a man she barely knew. The poker game commenced. Levi could not concentrate. His mind kept returning to Sophia. If only it had been a wench of a woman he had tricked. Sophia seemed so vulnerable and soft. Guilt gnawed at him. Can a man get an ale around here? He bellowed. A drink would cure him of his feelings, Levi decided. And a drink for everyone in the room, he announced when the saloon girl came around. A cheer rose. Should you not be home with your new wife? Dolly, the saloon girl asked. Levi pinched her behind and then pulled her against him. Mind your own business, Dolly, Levi said, his voice playful. Now go on and get us something to quench our thirst. Levi's eyes went to Ollie. The man's eyes were glued on him in a menacing way. Levi grinned at him. Ollie did not return the gesture. Chapter 7. I'll give you a hand with that. Sophia almost jumped out of her skin. Lance stepped out from behind a stack of hay heaped to one side of the barn. I'd appreciate that very much, Sophia acknowledged. Her whole body felt weary. She had not slept for much of the night, and when she finally did fall asleep, she had woken an hour later to the thumping of Levi's boots as he entered the house. She had sat up in the unfamiliar bed and listened to his drunken slurs and curses as he staggered into his bedroom. Why isn't Levi out here helping you to hitch the buggy? Lance asked. It was on the tip of Sophia's tongue to say that he was snoring away as they spoke. Instead, she smiled sweetly at Lance. I assured him I'd be all right. Lance snorted and proceeded to hitch the horse to the buggy. Thank you very much, Sophia said as he helped her into the driver's seat. If you need anything, let me know, Lance invited and stepped to the side. She nodded and pulled the reins. Tears blinded her, so that by the time she got to Eli, who was waiting on the porch, she could barely see. It was going to be much harder than she had thought, Sophia thought, as she drove the buggy towards town. To shift from being an adored wife to one who was only a wife on paper would take some getting used to. Perhaps, if she had no feelings for Levi, it would be easier. But as it was, something in her had awoken from the first moment she laid eyes on him. Sophia tethered the horse and buggy outside the store, hitching the animal to a post where there was a patch of grass. She must remember to give him some water, she thought as she walked Eli down to his school. Well, I wasn't sure to be expecting you this morning or not, Lois teased as soon as Sophia walked in. Sophia gave her friend a tired smile. If only her friend knew the truth. How was your first evening in your new home? Lois asked from where she stood behind the counter. For a fleeting moment, Sophia contemplated unburdening herself to her friend. Then she thought of all that Lois had done for her and Eli. Lois would throw a fit and blame herself for Sophia's woes. No, she would just have to carry her burden alone. She plastered a smile on her face and looked at Lois. I settled in well. I'm so pleased for you, Lois said, her tone wistful. I can't wait for the day Lance proposes. Oh, he will, Sophia said. He's completely taken with you. One can see it in his eyes. He's very slow to it, though, Lois commented and chuckled. Look, Sophia started to say and then closed her mouth. She was about to say, look where getting married quickly had got her, when she remembered that she was supposed to be a happily married woman. Sophia almost wept with relief when a salesman walked into the store at that moment. Her first duty in the mornings was to dust the shelves and mop the floor. She was glad for the chance to get away from Lois's questions. Her friend meant well. It just took so much energy to pretend to be happy when she felt as miserable as a wet cat. The future was not as dire as it had seemed the previous evening. She was employed, and with what she earned, she could provide for herself and Eli. All she had to do was to save up for a home. The trouble was, Sophia mused as she moved boxes from the floor, that she felt robbed. Her heart had opened up to Levi completely, and she had envisioned a future for them. The Lord would bless them with children so that Eli would have brothers and sisters. From all those dreams to nothing. The color had gone, and her future seemed as bleak as it did back in Pennsylvania after she lost Robert. The motions of everyday life led to a semblance of peace for Sophia. She and Eli adapted to their new life. The dinner stew of carrots, peas, and potatoes simmered on the stove. The back door let in a soft breeze that prevented the kitchen from getting too hot. Sophia stood in her favorite spot at the sink as she watched Eli and Lance in the distance. Eli sat on a pony while Lance held on to its reins and slowly walked it in wide circles. She owed so much to Lance for taking Eli under his wing. They rarely crossed paths with Levi. He came home when they were asleep, and when they left in the morning, he would still be asleep. Her eyes caught a movement, and to her surprise, she spotted Levi riding his horse towards Lance. Her breath caught as she took in his broad shoulders and strong legs. His dark brown hair bounced in time to the horse's gait. Sophia exhaled. She only had to look at Levi to have a physical reaction. She had seen other women stare at him when he came into the store. There was no doubt about it. Her husband was just about the most handsome man she had ever seen. He brought his horse to a stop near Lance and Eli and dismounted. Her heart remained suspended as he took a step towards Eli and ruffled his hair and then lifted him off the ground and back down again. Sophia beamed as she watched the trio. If only Levi would give their marriage a chance. Every night, she faithfully got on her knees and prayed for a miracle. Lance spoke while gesturing with his hands. He seemed agitated, and Sophia's heart missed a beat. Levi dipped his hands into his pocket and lowered his head. She wondered what had upset Lance so. Levi whirled around and mounted his horse, galloping off and leaving Lance and Eli gazing at him. He rode right past the house, and Sophia exhaled. Without giving it another thought, she left the house and headed to Lance and Eli. "Is everything all right?" She asked Lance after they exchanged a few pleasantries. He glanced away and seemed to wrestle with what he wanted to say. "Sophia, you're a wonderful young woman, and it pains me to see how Levi is treating you. I know you cover up for him, and that's noble of you, but it's hardly fair, is it?" She did not know how to respond. Her hand went to her mouth before she realized it, and she quickly dropped it when she had. She had endured enough teasing by Lois, and she was determined to stop the terrible habit. "He just needs time to get used to us," Sophia said feebly. Lance's eyes bore into hers. "Is there something you're not telling me?" Sophia shook her head. Her mouth could not form words. They had made a pact, and she intended to keep her end, even though the pain in her heart was growing to unbearable proportions. "Dinner is almost ready," Sophia told Eli. Turning to Lance, she added, "Would you like to join us for dinner?" "Thanks, but I'm afraid I have to forego the invitation. I'm going down to the mercantile for supplies," he said, his face coloring. Sophia beamed. How wonderful it was to see a man so enamored with her friend. "All right then, come on, Eli, let's go home." "Ma, did you see me ride the horse? It's so big, Mr. Lance had to lift me up," Eli gushed as they strolled hand in hand. She laughed and did not mention that he had been riding a pony. "I did, son, you did very well." He said, "Soon I shall be riding on my own," Eli continued. It was bittersweet listening to Eli's chatter. She was glad he had taken to the ranch and was enjoying himself. If only the cloud of leaving did not constantly hang over them. She had hoped that with time, Levi would thaw, but nothing had changed between them. How could it when he was never home? Frustration swelled her throat. Every hour brought them closer to the day they would have to pack and leave. She did not know how long it took to change the deed of a ranch. Sophia balled her left hand into a fist. "Oh Lord, please help us stay longer." Chapter 8. Levi dusted off his shirt as he strolled towards the house. He could make out Sophia's silhouette in the lamplight of the kitchen while she cleaned up after dinner. He sniffed at the air and inhaled the sweet scent of rain. Less than a second later, the first drops fell, trickling down his forehead. Levi quickened his step. Sophia gave a little yelp when he burst through the back door. Levi grinned. "Sorry I frightened you," he said. "There's a storm gathering." Her lips parted, but she did not say a word. He screwed his eyes. "Are you frightened of storms?" he asked. She shrugged, a little. A feeling of protectiveness filled him. He wanted to take her in his arms and whisper words of comfort. Instead, he abruptly left the kitchen. In the front room, a fire blazed from the fireplace, casting a golden glow across the room. Levi felt as though he was seeing the front room for the first time. There was a homey feel to the room that had been missing. Pink and white curtains draped the window that had been bare before. His eyes took in the seating arrangement and soft furnishing, and he let out a sigh of contentment. Even knowing theirs was a temporary arrangement, Sophia had gone on to make the house a home. Despite himself, an intense emotion he could not describe filled his chest. Just then, a bright light momentarily filled the room. Sophia dashed in, her face pale. "It's just lightning, nothing to be afraid of," Levi assured. She darted across the room and sat beside him. Levi stifled a smile. He wanted to tease her but resisted the urge, not wanting to upset her further. The fire illuminated her face so that she appeared as though she was glowing. Levi inhaled sharply. Sophia was a beautiful woman. Contentment filled his heart, and it hit him that he was content to spend the evening with her. He had returned early for fear of being caught in the storm, and now he was glad that he had. Outside, the wind howled, and the rain pelted the roof of the house. Yet for the first time since Levi could remember, he felt calm and at peace with himself. He glanced sideways at Sophia. It was all due to her and her boy. They had given him a home. He reached out and took her hand. He squeezed it, hoping that she could feel all that he was feeling at that moment. Her posture stiffened, and then in a swift movement, she slipped her hand away. Levi's chest tightened. How foolish of him. He curled his hands into fists. For a moment, he had been foolish enough to think there was something between them. Bitterness swirled in his mouth. "I'm turning in," he managed to say before storming out of the front room. Sophia felt inordinately shy as the three ate breakfast. She was relieved to be facing Eli rather than Levi, but despite that, she was aware of his every movement. Tiny goosebumps rose on the skin of her bare hands. From the corner of her eye, she watched his movements as he ate, alternating each bite of pancake with a sip of coffee. His joining them at breakfast had been unexpected. He had walked in through the back door just as she and Eli had sat down to eat. Sundays were easy for Sophia. It was the one day she could pretend the house was hers and give it a loving and thorough cleaning. "Do you like it here, Eli?" Levi asked. Startled, Eli looked up. "Yes, sir." "Want to help me feed the cows?" Levi continued. Eli's face lit up. Sophia's heart swelled with emotion. The last week had been a myriad of emotions. She did not understand what was happening, but it was too fragile to probe too much. Levi had been coming directly home from his days on the ranch, and he was slowly but surely taking Eli under his wing. "Let's go then, cows don't wait for no man," Levi said and pushed his chair back. A hand fell on her shoulder and caressed the nape of her neck. Sophia sucked in a breath. The next thing Sophia knew, warmth had swamped her body. Disappointment crept through her when Levi dropped his hand. It took 3 minutes for her legs to stop trembling and for her pulse to return to normal. Sophia linked her hands together. Had her prayers been answered? She had gone on her knees every night and prayed for Levi and her marriage. Once, she had broken down and sobbed out deep-hearted pleas to the Lord. Her mouth formed into a smile. She was not mistaken. Something was happening in their marriage. Levi was beginning to care for her and Eli. Oh, dear Lord, how she hoped so. There was no doubt in her heart that she loved her husband, if only he would love her back. Sophia's step was light as she went about her morning chores. In Levi's room, she gathered the blankets in her hands and sniffed them. They smelt of him, a mixture of soap and hay. Reluctantly, she let go of the blankets and proceeded to tidy the bed. Every chore she performed carried more weight that morning. Time flew, and soon enough she was back in the kitchen to prepare their midday meal. Working in the mercantile meant that Sophia kept the pantry well stocked, and to Levi's credit, they always had fresh and dried meat. She headed to the pantry now and returned minutes later with a slab of beef wrapped in brown paper. She went to work immediately, slicing it into steaks before placing them in the pan. Soon the smell of frying steak and boiling potatoes filled the kitchen. It felt good to be cooking for her family, Sophia thought as she laid the plates on the table. Her heart fluttered at the thought of seeing Levi again. She was behaving like a young girl, Sophia chided herself. It felt good, a far cry from those first days when Levi had behaved as though she did not exist. When the midday meal was ready, Sophia slipped off her apron and opened the back door. "Hey!" Sophia cried out when she ran into a solid body. "Who does he think he is?" Levi thundered as he pushed her out of the way. "What is it? What happened?" Levi halted in the middle of the kitchen and then, without warning, smashed the wall with his fist. Sophia jumped back in fright. "Telling me what to do. I'll show him," Levi continued, speaking as though to himself. "Is it Lance?" Levi turned to her as though seeing her for the first time. His mouth contorted in anger, but he said nothing. Sophia crossed her hands on her chest. She had never seen Levi this angry. She steeled herself and took a step towards him. "It can't be as bad as all that to upset you so," she said, and placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. He recoiled and glared at her. "What do you know about it? Are you working with Lance to spy on me and my friends?" Sophia's eyes widened. "No, how can you say that? I don't know what you're talking about." She inhaled sharply and fought down the urge to lash out at Levi. What was wrong with him to accuse her of spying on him? She defended him every day to his uncle, and here he was raining accusations on her. She would be the voice of reason, Sophia decided. "Please, Levi, sit down. Let's have some food." "You'll feel better with something in your stomach." His eyes widened as she gazed at her. "Have you lost your mind, woman? You think eating will make Lance give me the deed to the ranch?" To Sophia's humiliation, Levi repeated what she had said, imitating her voice almost perfectly. If she hadn't been so hurt, she would have laughed. "Don't you go thinking that you're my wife," he spat at her. "As soon as I get that deed, you and your son will be out of here." Sophia saw Eli standing in the doorway, and she let out a yelp. Levi's eyes followed hers, and when he saw Eli, something in him shrunk and his anger dissipated. He hissed and marched out of the house, slamming the front door behind him. "He doesn't mean it, son," Sophia said. Eli gazed at her with large, sad eyes, and she wanted to slap Levi Kirtman. Right there and then, Sophia made a decision. She was done with him. As soon as Levi got his deed, she and Eli would get their own home. She could not bear to see her son hurt by anyone, not even a man she fancied herself in love with. Chapter 9. Only after downing 3 shots of whiskey did Levi feel marginally better. "You needed that, honey, didn't you?" Dolly, the saloon girl, commented, standing behind him and at the saloon counter. "Where have you been, anyway?" Dolly continued, her body too close for comfort. "I haven't seen you in a while. That new wife keeping you under control? Can't a man have his drink in peace?" Levi asked with a growl. Dolly shrugged. "Sure, your friends are calling for you." She gestured toward a table in a corner. Levi's spirits lifted when he saw Hubert. His grin turned to a frown when he saw Ollie at the same table. He did not understand Hubert. What was it that his friends spoke about with such an unscrupulous character? Reluctantly, Levi slid off the stool and sauntered towards the pair. He and Hubert exchanged pleasantries before he gave Ollie a curt nod. To Levi's surprise, the man beamed at him. "Pull up a chair," Hubert invited. "Dolly," he shouted, "give the man another whiskey." Levi knew he should switch to beer if he was to keep his wits about him, but he needed the rush that whiskey gave him. "You don't look like a happy man," Hubert commented, boring his eyes into Levi's face. It was as though Levi had been waiting for someone to ask him. "That damn man!" Levi hissed. The words rolled out of his mouth. The only part he left out was Lance's accusation that Hubert was stealing Levi's cattle. Sometimes his uncle went too far. Were it not for Hubert, Levi would not have had a new house in which to live with his new wife. The thought of taking Sophia to his father's ranch house had sickened him. Thanks to Hubert and the crew he brought to the site, the house had been ready on time. Levi looked at his friend's face now, filled with indignation on his behalf. As he had told Lance, he trusted Hubert with his life. "You should let him know you're no fool," Hubert said. "Let him know who really owns that ranch." Levi thought about what Hubert said, and the idea appealed to him. Lance had the nerve to tell him to steer clear of Hubert, as if he was a child. Just because he still had the deed to the house, he thought he had the right to order him around. That was another thing. The deal had been that Lance turn over the deed to him once he and Sophia were married. Now Levi was saddled with a wife he did not want and no deed in sight. Anger swelled in his chest as he thought of how Lance was manipulating him. "Give us another round, Dolly," Hubert said as the waitress sashayed across the room. "Sure, sugar," Dolly said and winked at Levi. He quickly looked away. "Sounds good, but how do I do that?" Levi shook his head. The whiskey was getting to him. A bead of sweat broke out on his forehead and trickled down the side of his face. He wiped it off with the back of his hand. He would have to take it a little easy. "Hey," it was Ollie. Levi glanced at him. "You haven't cleared your debt," the man said. Levi's first instinct was to laugh, which made Ollie madder than hell. He growled and glared at him, prominent purple veins popping out across his forehead. Abruptly, Levi stopped laughing and leant across the table so that his face was inches away from Ollie's. "I paid you everything I owed, and you know it." "I know no such thing. You took long enough to repay my money. There's such a thing as interest." "You're not getting anything else out of me," Levi said, his voice cold. There was no way Ollie was going to get a cent from him. He felt a sudden revulsion as he took in Ollie's beady eyes and the long scar that ran across his cheek. "Get off this table," Levi bellowed. Ollie glanced at Hubert, who shrugged in response. In one fluid movement, he was up and had shoved his chair back. He pointed at Levi. "This is not the end," he hissed. "You're going to pay one way or another." Levi did not break the stare. He was not afraid of Ollie or any other man, his Uncle Lance included. He could handle them. Ollie turned and marched towards the exit of the saloon. "I don't like that man," Levi said. Hubert waved a dismissive hand. "Ollie's all talk. Ignore him. That's what I do." Levi's mind had switched from Ollie to Lance. He had to show his uncle who was boss. "Lance," Levi mumbled. "You need to teach him a lesson," Hubert said, in tune with Levi's thoughts. "My father left me that ranch," Levi said, the words taking long to roll off his tongue. "Everyone knows it, apart from your uncle," Hubert said, leaning forward. "I have an idea. The way I see it, you must show Lance that he doesn't know how to run a ranch of that size," he said. Levi nodded. "Go on. Hit him where it hurts. Steal the cows until the ranch is broke. I guarantee that he'll gladly turn the deed over to you." Levi reached for his glass of whiskey, and as he tipped the contents into his mouth, half spilled. It felt wonderful as the hot spirit rushed down his throat. He banged the glass back on the table and blinked rapidly as he tried to focus on Hubert. He had said something, but as hard as he tried, Levi could not remember what it was. "What?" he asked, his voice slurred. "I said we should teach Lance a lesson, steal those precious cows of his, show him he can't run the ranch." Levi screwed his eyes. Show Uncle Lance he did not have the skills needed to run the ranch. He was the one who had grown up on the ranch. Yes, he would show Uncle Lance how it was done. He looked up at Hubert and grinned. It was a brilliant idea, and one he would not have thought of himself. They would steal the cows, and Lance would be forced to admit he had no idea what he was doing with the ranch. Levi experienced a moment of elation as he imagined his uncle handing over the deed, his eyes downcast with shame at running the ranch down. A thought crossed his mind. Where would they hide the cattle? His mind was like fog. One moment it was clear, and the next, the mist descended so that he could not recall his train of thought. "Let's get us some cattle," he yelled. Levi staggered out of the saloon, with Hubert hot on his heels. Within minutes, they were galloping towards the ranch. Levi was so drunk he almost slid off the horse several times. The wind helped clear his foggy brain a little. His heart raced, drumming against his chest. The moment had come to show Uncle Lance just what Levi was made of. He smelt it before he saw it. Smoke. He spurred the horse on and almost fell off as the animal took the sharp corner to the ranch. Levi's heart pounded, and he felt as though he had stopped breathing. He saw the heavy smoke rising from behind his father's ranch house. "Sophia!" Levi screamed. "Eli!" Levi could see nothing but greedy flames. "We have to get them out," Levi said to Hubert, his tone urgent. "Sophia and Eli are in there." Hubert did not answer him. "Please, let's do something. They'll burn in there," Levi said, his voice desperate. Hubert pulled his reins, and the horse galloped hard for the pastures. Levi raced his horse towards the back of his father's ranch house, and lifting his body, he gave a hard tug at the fire bell. Then he turned back to the house and jumped off his horse. The fire had not reached the back of the house, but the black smoke was everywhere. Covering his mouth, Levi braced himself to enter the burning house. "You can't go in there," Lance shouted from behind him. Levi did not bother to reply. How could his uncle understand? He could not. He could not lose Sophia and Eli. They were his family. As soon as he stepped into the kitchen, he heard Eli's cries and all thoughts flew from his mind, except that he needed to get to the boy. As he felt his way towards the front room, he saw Sophia blindly making her way towards him, a blanket-covered bundle in her arms. "I'll take him," Levi said and lifted the boy. The blanket was wet, and he silently applauded Sophia. She had thought to cover herself and Eli with a wet blanket. He pushed her ahead of him towards the back of the house. "We have to get out now." Fresh air hit him as soon as he stepped out, and his chest exploded into coughs. Behind him, a deafening sound filled the air. He ran, Sophia ahead of him. Levi glanced behind. The house had collapsed, the fire leaping more than 10 feet high. The group of ranch hands jumped back, but continued passing the buckets of water. "Is he all right?" Sophia asked. Levi realized then that he still held the boy. Sophia lifted the wet blanket from her son. His frightened eyes looked back at them. Relief flooded Levi on seeing the child unharmed. He glanced at Sophia then, taking in her cheeks and forehead streaked with soot and ash. Emotion grabbed him by the throat. He pulled Sophia into his arms. He knew. He loved her. He did not care about the burnt-down house. He held her and Eli tightly. It had been so close. Tears welled up in his eyes. What if he had lost them? He could not live with himself if anything happened to them. He kissed Sophia softly on her forehead. Chapter 10. At last, the flames died. "Take Eli to the old ranch house," Levi said, and gave Sophia a gentle shove. A surge of love rushed through him as he watched Sophia's form disappear, huddled under a blanket. "The cattle are gone." Levi whirled about. "What do you mean the cattle are gone?" "It's true, Levi," a ranch hand spoke up from behind Lance. "It was Hubert and another man. It was that slick Ollie," another ranch hand said. "I saw him with my own eyes. They waited until we were all busy fighting the fire." Levi cursed under his breath. His uncle had been right all along. He grinded his teeth and curled his hands into fists. He might have been taken in once, but this was the last time. "Let's go after them," Levi said. "There's no time to waste." "They're probably headed to Oakland," Lance said. "It shouldn't take long to catch up with them." The men ran to the barn and grabbed their horses. "Wait," shouted Lance at one of the men. "Go and get the sheriff. Tell him to come with as many men as he can muster." The man nodded curtly and dug in his spurs. In an instant, 5 horses were in motion, galloping furiously towards the road that led to Oakland, a forested area used as a rendezvous by cattle rustlers. It was there that they slaughtered the stolen cattle, removed their hides, and buried the carcasses. The hides were then shipped to the east for several dollars apiece. Levi's mind filled the blanks as he furiously rode his stallion. He had been a fool. He should have known that Lance would never lie to him. All along, Hubert and Ollie had it planned out. Set the house on fire and get Levi drunk as a skunk. Ollie's demand for more money had been a ruse to get Levi's temper going and storm out. It was him that had started the fire that had almost killed Sophia and Eli. He tightened his hold on his reins. They would pay. "They're ahead," Lance called, his voice rising above the drum of hooves. Levi trained his eyes ahead and saw nothing. Then he realized he was blinded by the dust thrown up by the herd. Lance came to a halt and waited for the men to gather around him. "This should be over fast. We've outnumbered them, but we need to cover both men. I'll come up from the left with you, he said, pointing at one ranch hand, and Levi and you will approach from the right. One man will stay behind the herd. Got it? Let's hope the sheriff is on his way. They all nodded. Hubert and Ollie were fools, Levi thought as he saw their 2 horses on the side of the road. They must have been drunk to think they could get away with it. He used the cattle for cover as he moved. In a second, he was on them. His men were right behind him. The criminals didn't know what hit them. They were overpowered and tied up. No loss to anyone, the sheriff had remarked as he looked down at Hubert's bound form. They'll be in jail for a long time, and they won't be welcome in these parts when they are released. It seemed Levi was the only one in Prinville who had not known Hubert to be a scoundrel. See to the herd, Lance instructed a ranch hand as he and Levi made their way to the house. Levi turned the door handle quietly and padded in, taking care to tread softly. He found her on the couch, her head on the edge and her brown hair almost touching the floor. "Oh, Sophia," his mouth went dry. "I'll see you in the morning," Lance whispered to him. Levi wrenched his gaze from Sophia. He turned to his uncle and placed a hand on his arm. "I don't know what to say, Uncle Lance." "No need for that. We're blood," Lance said. "I'll see you in the morning." When the front door shut, Levi made his way across the room and sat on the edge of the chair. He patted her hand. "Sophia," he said, and shook her gently. She mumbled and turned her head before opening her eyes and giving him a sleepy smile. Levi reached out and smoothed her hair. She was so beautiful and brave. How could he not have seen what a treasure she was? He had been so obsessed with the ranch deed that he had failed to see what was right under his nose. "I thought I had lost you," Levi said, his voice catching. Sophia took his hand into both of hers and squeezed. "Did you get the cattle?" she asked. "Every last one of them, and those 2 will never bother anyone again," Levi said. She nodded. "That's good." She paused for a moment before continuing. "I'm so sorry about your house." Levi shook his head. "I don't care about the house as long as you and Eli are safe." Tears filled her eyes. "Besides, I like this house too. It's where I grew up." "I like it too. It's warm," Sophia said, her voice slurring. She was fighting to stay awake. She tucked his hand under her chin and promptly shut her eyes. She looked so peaceful asleep, with her mouth slightly parted. He gazed at every inch of her face, loving each feature. Gratitude washed through him. He had another chance to make everything right between them, and he would. It had taken losing the new house to realize the depth of his feelings for Sophia. He glanced at his hand still imprisoned in hers. She had not loosened her hold as she slept. If anything, she held him tighter. It filled him with pride to know that she thought of him as a person who would protect her and Eli. Levi sat in the same position until he could no longer keep his eyes open. Chapter 11. Sophia woke with a start, her eyes darting around the unfamiliar room, the memory of the previous evening returning to her mind. The fire. Her limbs went limp as it dawned on her how close she and Eli had come to losing their lives. Had it not been for Levi, she might not have found her way out through the dense smoke. Sobs racked her body as emotions overwhelmed her. Just then, footsteps sounded, and arms gathered her up. Without looking, she knew it was Levi. He cradled her head against his body. As her sobs subsided, she became aware of his closeness and her pulse raced. Slowly, she lifted herself and sat up. Kneeling by the side of the couch, their eyes met. He looked ravaged. Sophia reached out and touched his cheek. He covered her hand with his, leaned towards her and kissed her softly. A jolt shot through her and she felt as though her entire body was melting. "Ma?" They both jumped as if they had been caught with their hands in the cookie jar. "Eli," Levi said and stood up. "How did you sleep? Did you like it in my old room?" Eli's eyes lit up. "Is that where you slept a long time ago?" "Yes, son," Levi said. "When I was a boy just like you." He had called Eli son. What did that mean? Sophia's mind was a maze of confusion. She could not think properly, and her body was still tingling from Levi's kiss. She brushed her eyes and straightened her creased dress. Levi had an arm over Eli's shoulders. They made a fine pair, but they were not father and son. She shook her head free of the dreams. It had happened before. Levi had warmed to her and Eli and then suddenly withdrew. It was only the previous night that he had told her that she and Eli would soon leave his house. She must not be fool enough to get taken in again. He was probably still affected by losing his house. As soon as he was back to his normal self, he would become mean to her again. She would protect her heart, Sophia decided. She dragged her feet, mumbled something about seeing what they could eat, and made for the kitchen. To her surprise, a bag rested near the door. She checked the contents to find milk and fresh bread. Oh, Lance! How would she ever repay Levi's uncle for the kindness he had showered on her from the first day? Lois would understand if she was a little late today, Sophia mused. Soon enough, she had set the table after washing the dusty plates and cups they would need. Thankfully, the kitchen had everything she needed. Eli entered the kitchen, followed by Levi. Sophia could not bear to look at him. How could he have kissed her like that, knowing in a short time she and Eli would be gone? Lance was kind enough to bring us breakfast, Sophia said. She could feel Levi's eyes boring into her. She poured the milk into glasses and served each of them a chunk of bread. The milk and bread tasted like stone, and it took every ounce of her being to swallow. She just wanted the whole charade to be over and done with. Laughter rang out as Levi and Eli dipped their bread into the milk, competing to see who would finish first. Longing tugged at her heart. It was a shame that Levi could not see what a fine father he would make. A knock on the front door interrupted them, and Levi stood up. "I'll check who it is and see them off fast," he said, and winked at Eli. Eli giggled. It warmed Sophia to see him normal after the fire. Eli had been the first to wake up, and his calls had woken her up from a deep slumber. Sophia remembered the terror she felt as she felt her way to his room, the smoke blinding her. Lance's voice wafted into the kitchen before the front door shut. She could hear the two men speaking in low, inaudible voices. "Finish up your breakfast. We need to get you to school," Sophia said. "Can I not stay home today with Mr. Levi?" Eli asked. Nausea rose in her throat. She wanted to strangle Levi for the hope he was instilling in her son. Levi glanced at the deed in disbelief. He finally had it. He glanced up and beamed at his uncle. "You deserve it, son, and what's more, your pa would be very proud of the man you've become." The words moved Levi, and he could not utter a word in response. He saw the truth of his uncle's words. If only he had matured when his father was alive. He had been such a fool, fighting his pa whenever he tried to guide him. Knowing how close his tears were, Levi changed the topic. "I hope you'll stay, Uncle Lance. I need you here," Levi said, meaning every word. Had it not been for his uncle, there would have been no ranch. Hubert would have stolen his herd out from under Levi. He owed his uncle everything, even his most precious possessions, Sophia and Eli. "I can't, son," Lance said, his eyes twinkling. "I want to follow in your footsteps." Levi raised an eyebrow. "I want to marry Lois, if she'll have me. Maybe have a child or two." Levi clapped him on his back. "Finally," Lance grinned. "I'm tired of being on the move. I reckon it's time to settle down." "Good for you, Uncle Lance," Levi said. "I won't leave you in a lurch, though. I'll stay until you can find good ranch hands. I'm too old for this." They chatted a while longer before Lance excused himself. Levi placed the deed on the table of the front room. He savored the moment of having the deed to the ranch in his name. It dawned on him that it was not the deed itself that pleased him so. It was that his uncle now deemed him mature enough to take care of the ranch. His pa had been wise to leave it with Uncle Lance. Levi now understood. "I won't let you down, Pa," he murmured. His grin could not be contained. Sophia walked into the room, threw a glance at the deed and at him. She smiled. "You got what you wanted." Levi beamed. "Yes, I did, thanks to you." She shrugged. "We made a deal." Her words cut through him like a knife. He looked at her closer. Despite the lines of exhaustion etched on her face, her brown eyes had shadows of sadness. "What is wrong, Sophia?" he asked. "Nothing's wrong," she said. "Eli and I will be out of your hair in a week. That should give me sufficient time to get us a place." Levi's jaw dropped. Had the woman lost her mind? There was no way she was leaving the house, not when he had just found her. She was his wife. "Why would you do that?" Levi asked. She wetted her lips. "I'm just living up to my end of our bargain." Levi closed the distance between them. He tipped her chin with his finger. Do you love me, Sophia? He asked. His heart pounded as he watched various expressions run through her eyes. First it was shock, and then her skin tingled pink. Yes, Levi, I love you, she said. He grasped her waist and crushed her to him. He inhaled the still smoky scent of her hair, ran his hands over her back, not daring to believe what he had heard. It was one thing to be married and quite another to know a woman loved you. He held her at arm's length. I love you so much, my wife, and nothing would make me allow you and Eli to leave. You both belong here. This is your home. What about the deed? She asked. All promises are off, Sophia, apart from the ones we made during our marriage ceremony. Sophia cocked her pretty head. Can you remember any of it? Shame filled Levi when he remembered the callousness with which he had treated the ceremony. I'm sorry, Sophia, I was a fool. Can we start over? I love you more than life itself. Rather than answer, she broke out into noisy sobs. Ma? Eli said, running into the room. Your ma's all right. She's crying from too much happiness, Levi said. He looked puzzled. Come here, son. We're family now, Levi said in a gruff voice. Eli rushed to him, and Levi opened his arms and enveloped his son and wife in a crushing embrace. He was never going to lose them, he silently vowed to himself. His mind worked as he stood there holding his family. He would build Sophia the biggest mansion Prineville had ever seen. Epilogue. 3 years later, Sophia and Lois sat on the large porch, shaded from the summer sun. The heat did not seem to bother the children, who screamed and laughed as they splashed water over themselves. Levi had cleaned out the pond for them to play in while he took Lance to the new barns behind the house. The old house was no more. It had been demolished as soon as their new house was built. The children frolicked in the water, the oldest, Eli, delighting the younger ones with his antics. This would be perfect if my tummy was not so big, Lois quipped. Sophia laughed and glanced sideways at her friend. Not too long to go now. I can't wait. Lance is determined to fill our house. That sounds like Levi, Sophia said. He's itching for another baby. The twins, Eleanor and Francis, were 2 years old, and according to Levi, they needed a younger sibling. Eli would love it. Look how he takes care of the younger ones. Our Beatrice says she'll marry Eli when she grows up, Lois said. Sophia chuckled. Eli had taken his role as older brother seriously, and he was delighted by the talk Levi gave him about him being their firstborn and the one they could count on. Her eyes found his tall frame. His skin was golden brown, a testament to the hours he spent outdoors helping Levi with the cattle. She shifted her gaze to Beatrice, a sweet child who took after Lois in looks and temperament. The men's voices floated towards the porch, and moments later they appeared. Their friendship had grown in leaps and bounds, and it was hard to believe that not long ago the two had not seen eye to eye. They were laughing now as they walked onto the porch. Levi made straight for her. He kissed her forehead and then collapsed on the rocking chair next to hers. Do you miss ranching? Lois asked Lance. I must admit this new layout is a beauty, Lance said. But I don't miss it. When I do, I come for a day and help out. After that, I leave gladly, happy. It's not my responsibility. Better Levi than me, he quipped, and they all laughed. Lance worked in the mercantile alongside his wife. In fact, Sophia liked to tease Lois that she had retired since marrying. She was more often in their home seeing to the children. Sophia let her head fall against the back of the rocking chair. It was a perfect summer day, but then each day was perfect in spite of the weather. She opened one eye and watched the children. Sometimes when she went on her knees to say her prayers, words failed her. How did one express gratitude for blessings of such a rich life? How did one thank one's maker for such happiness?